Running, when I'm feeling the pain, I'm feeling the shame. Will I go numb? Will I go insane? It's cold, yeah. Shout out FHTMG, shout out Abu Das. Yeah. Running, from the feeling the pain, the feeling the shame. Will I go numb? Will I go insane? No, I just gotta pray. Oh, I just gotta pray. Running, from the feeling the pain, the feeling the shame. Or will I go numb or go insane? No, you gotta pray. Oh, I gotta pray. I got a prayer for that. I got a prayer for that. I got a prayer for that. I got a prayer for that.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the People's Voice DC. I am Pastor Mike. Got my brother Chris Otten. You guys know him as a former mayoral candidate, a former DC City Council for Ward 1 candidate, strongly representing the Green Party of DC. And we have a special guest with us, Attorney Teresa. How is everybody doing today?
Very good.
Free Palestine.
That's right. That's right. Always standing up. Free Palestine. So let's get right into it. I'm excited. I don't think my two counterparts are as excited. But if you haven't heard, the Commanders are coming home. And not only are they coming home, they are coming right towards 7. Yes. How do you guys feel about that?
Oh, the first thing that comes to my mind is we got a crisis of priorities. We got people rushing to pay $15 for a hot dog and $300 for their seats to watch millionaires catch a ball when we're leading in some of the highest childhood asthma rates, illiteracy rates, moms dying, giving birth rates, highest displacement rates. I mean, what's the priority, in the District of Columbia, the nation's capital, right? It's kind of my initial reaction.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about the stadium. Growing up here, I have memories of the Redskins and RFK Stadium and haven't been there. I do, and I get Mike's excitement. I also understand where Chris is coming from as well, especially with the budget kerfuffle with Congress, and it's a little weird that we're talking about all these cuts and like laying people off and all that stuff, but there's money to like contribute to the stadium. I mean, I think under normal circumstances I'd be more excited about it, but it, there's been a push to like change things like the Rental Housing Act, change TOPA because of the market supposedly cratering, and like I don't know, like I just feel like it's I have mixed feelings, and I also feel like I'm getting mixed messages.
A little bit of gaslighting.
Yeah.
So, Chris, you seem like you have a lot to say about that subject.
Well, I mean, I saw a press release earlier, like the contrast, right? So social housing gets introduced in 2022, probably the longest council hearing in history, 11 plus hours. I think I testified at like 1 a.m. in front of Anita Bonds. There was like 150 people who testified overwhelmingly in support of social housing, which would create an ecology of municipally owned, mixed income, truly affordable housing at scale. Not this IZ nonsense that we've all been duped to think is helping the city when it's actually fueling displacement. And I heard it was referenced as a policy of modern day redlining. That's inclusionary zoning, whereas social housing, this bill was introduced in November 2022. That's like, what is that? That's going to be 3 years this November, right? So that's part of the contrast for me. It's like RFK was turned over by Congress to Mayor Bowser in December. Here we are in April, and we have this deal that might put taxpayers on the hook for $1 billion for luxury playtime, while social housing, which would really get at the fundamental question of affordable shelter for human beings in DC, sits and languishes in legislative committees. Crisis of priorities. I don't know.
So are you saying that two things cannot possibly be happening at the same time? First of all, are you saying that the stadium isn't going to bring thousands of jobs, year-round jobs? Let's not be focused on these 8 games and think those are the only times the stadium will be open. Not to mention this plan, and I'm actually trying to upload this map. But this plan of the stadium is not just including the stadium; it's including a state-of-the-art sportsplex. And as a Ward 7 resident, I can say, hey, look, even right here where I reside in Marshall Heights, Marshall Heights football team don't have a home. The cheerleaders of Ward 7 don't have a home. We would love to have a place that our sports teams, which we know when kids get involved in things like this, it does decrease crime. We would love to have a place what you can call home. So I'm just wondering, are you saying that because the stadium is being built, social housing can't be built? Two things can happen at the same time. As a matter of fact, funding from one can help support the other.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Well, I think, I think part of, I don't want to speak for Chris, but my problem with it, and I do have mixed feelings, is that this is part of a paradigm of development that is old, right? It's something that we've seen. We've seen Nats Stadium, we've seen DC United Stadium come up, and we've seen how the neighborhoods around it have developed. I don't, this is not something that is, it's not innovative. It's a model that we've seen, and it's part of a model that exists in DC and in other places. I think the issue is right now that model is imploding. The model is imploding, and they're using the implosion of that model to justify shortening times for evictions, taking evictions out of court and putting them in administrative hearings, taking away TOPA rights. And it's because that model is imploding that they are taking away tenants' rights right now. And adding another stadium to it may be like, more fuel, more kindling, so to speak, for the short term. But ultimately, that model does not work. And we know it does not work because it's currently imploding, and they're using it as justification to take away people's rights. And I think that there is a model that, and Chris can speak to this a lot more than I can, Um, I think there is a model that has potential to work. Meanwhile, it's languished for 3 years, and we're investing. We're it's almost like we're throwing good money behind bad money here because we know this model doesn't work.
And Chris, you're welcome to jump in. I definitely understand that, and I have been one of those ones who've been quick to talk about it and critique the model that has been happening in our city. But I also think that there are other factors. I've been very critical of people, especially our commissioners. I think that they hold responsibilities of certain things like community benefits agreements. They sign a lot of things that we criticize have been signed off by our commissioners. And if the commissioner is the voice of the neighborhood, I can't speak against what people want for their neighborhood. And we're saying that commissioners are signing off and they're not speaking for the neighborhood, then that needs to be another conversation and commissioners need to be held accountable. Um, but the things that I have seen come forth, I've seen a lot of problems with accountability as far as community benefits agreements. Now, of course, the mayor has had her fair share. That's a whole nother conversation of what she does. But I will say with this particular stadium plan, as far as the plan is concerned, it definitely seems like it's a fair plan. I'll be critical and say that it was not a community included plan. This was a plan strictly. This deal was done strictly by the mayor's administration and the commanders. The council wasn't involved in this deal. Neither was the constituents had to say in anything. So that I will criticize. But I don't think that this deal hurts the community.
Well, here's who this deal is going to help. This is Josh Harris. He's the 274th wealthiest human being on the planet. He's got $9.9 billion sitting in an account somewhere. That's who this deal is going to help. It's going to king make this guy. He'll be able to treat his other billionaire friends to shrimp and cocktails from some suite at this new stadium that this DC taxpayers are going to be funding to a significant extent. And I just wonder, if the stadium is going to cost $3 billion, when I go buy a car, I got to take out a loan and I have to, it might be a third of the value of what I have in the bank, or, a car is a big expense. A house is a big expense for most working people. We take out loans. We have to pay them off in 30 years. This guy can pay for the whole state. He could pay for the whole place, and it wouldn't even fade. It'd be a third of what his worth is. Like, it would be nothing for this guy. I just think, if he wants to build a stadium, let him build it, and on his dime, and we can build housing and social housing and all that stuff around it, and do that. There are real questions whether everything that the mayor said at the press conference on Monday, to entice us dropping, billions of stacks of money on this, is that, it's going to have housing, it's going to be rec centers, it's going to be green space. It's just like everything is going to be possible in this, 200 acres or whatever. And it's just, I just don't know what plan is on.
It's about holding leadership accountable to make sure that their end of the bargain is held up. I don't think that it's not possible. I mean, if you want me to sit up here and say I don't believe in things and I don't believe it's possible, I can't do that because I do believe it's possible. But I mean, I have tremendous faith, but I can't say it's not. Like, we just have to start holding leadership accountable, and we have to start voting for leadership that will stick to their word.
Well, I mean, Ari mentioned earlier that this stuff's not new. There was a book put out 25 years ago called The Field of Schemes. I mean, completely debunks the whole notion that these sort of projects are economic drivers for cities. I mean, it's a suck. It's an economic suck. For the folks who live around there, it's going to be real difficult, on those Sundays. It's going to be real difficult. I've already heard folks who talked about, RFK when it was active and live. And I just think it was, it was telling because I never thought about some of the daily life issues that people had to deal with, like just cleaning up after a Sunday. When it's invaded by everybody except maybe for DC folks, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, most of the folks coming to these games aren't living in DC, and most of the working folks I know won't be able to afford the prices of the tickets. I mean, this is gonna be out of reach for most working people in DC. Like, if you make minimum wage or you make less than $85,000 a year, you're not going to see the Washington football team play.
I mean, I heard the same thing said when the National Stadium was built. I heard some of these same sentiments being said. I live close to the National Stadium. Well, as we all know, I grew up right there in Potomac Gardens. I was residing there at the time. All the National Stadium did was provide several jobs to people in my community who never, for the most part, would have went to work or had a job. To this day, they look forward every summer and spring to, hey, let's go to, I'm going back to work. I'm going to the stadium. You can catch me, And so it's changed a lot of lives in my community. We talked about the traffic and everything. In Eastern Market and Pennsylvania Avenue, there's no bad traffic that happen in my neighborhood. When you go down towards Navy Yard, I still can get where I can go. I mean, unless I'm on the exact same street as National Park, which is expected to be busy. It's the street of the stadium. So, I mean, I expect that. Also, I mean, I don't think this is the kind of city that's headed towards promoting more vehicles on the street. I think the idea of our city is to have less vehicles and more bikes, which kind of coincides with the architecture and the structure of how RFK will be built. I just don't, even to the affordability, Potomac Gardens is one of the last standing housing communities. So it's had nowhere near the effect that other communities that didn't have a stadium near them even have. So, I mean, none of the things that was said happened to us is my point. And the stadium is here. The Nationals won a championship. We're all thriving. Like, it's great.
I'll say this. So that area, that Navy Yard area, has some of the highest development rates in the entire country. It's built more units between, I think, the late aughts to like the late teens than anywhere else in the country. But also, it has some of the highest black placement rates of anywhere in the country. And currently, when you look at this city, and this is straight from Councilman White's office, the chair of the Housing Committee, DC has the highest rental delinquency rate in the entire country. 20% of people currently are occupying units. 20% of renters are not paying rent right now. And it's because they can't afford it. I don't think that they're just trying to skate here. I think it's because the
Right.
rent's too much. It's too hard to survive in this city. Um, and so, when I bring up these things, when I discuss like, hey, like this is a model, right? Um,
Hmm.
this model of building a stadium or building a playground sort of place, like they're talking about Therm in Ward 8 or the Wharf, which just got sold, by the way. Um, you're talking about areas that are adult playgrounds, and the model is that you know it will attract jobs and it will bring enough tax revenue to enhance the experiences of people who live in the city. And so that's the model. And so RFK, the new RFK, fits within that model. It's not an exception to this model. um, but what we see with the 20% of people not paying rents, the massive amounts of displacement, what we see is that this model doesn't work. And you know, I I do believe that there are some people who've been able to stick around. I know one of the differences in Navy Yard compared to like some other parts of the city that have experienced this model is that Navy Yard still has, or Navy Yard Southwest still has public housing. They're tearing down public housing in other places, and they're not able to benefit from these models. People are just being displaced, um, and who knows how long the public housing gets to stick around that area, because there's been talks for years about getting rid of it. So I don't know. Like I see the benefits. I think that it's great. I'd love to have the Washington football team back. Um, I mean, it's hard for me to even not say Redskins, because like that's part of like my growing up here. But at the same time, like the model doesn't work, and it's imploding right now. Right now, they are taking rights. Council is taking rights from residents because the model is failing. And so it makes no sense to dump a bunch of money into this failed model when there's another model that is, you know, that is viable and and from what I heard from Chris, can even bring income into the city. So why not give that model a try and use that to build a stadium? I'd like to see that rather than just continue with this kind of doomed um, circumstance.
Are you saying that the people of DC? I mean, this should be about the people of DC, and not a select group from DC. And we'll have more to talk about that in next week's show when we have our Homes Not Stadiums guests on. But this should be about what the majority of DC residents want. In the and I'm a progressive Democrat, so but in the progressive sort of lefty wing of DC, there is this pushback. Um, but if you go throughout DC and talk to the average resident, they're excited about the stadium coming back. They're excited about they want the Commanders to play here. If you go to a few that are well versed politically, and that uh, don't represent the majority of the city, then there may be pushback. But to my average neighbor, they actually want this. Are you saying we're not to do what the people want?
That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that if you're against it, the same way that the majority rules, uh, we also have free speech. And, to the extent that I can sway my neighbor about um, the propriety or um, the benefits of this stadium, if I can sway them, then I'm going to do that. I'm going to use this platform and use whatever platform I have to, say, hey, maybe this isn't such a great idea. you know, and if at the end of the day that's what the people want, then that's what the people want. I mean, but like really, like when you look at that stuff, like the average person doesn't even really vote in the city. When you look at the voter turnout in Ward 8, it's horrible. So like it's hard to say that any of this stuff has the imprimatur of the average person because they're not voting. And a lot of the reason that they're not voting is because they're apathetic about this current model, and what they've seen hasn't benefited them. And so that they see no point in participating in the electoral process. And I'll try and talk them into that, even though the majority may be against it, right? I'm still going to try and talk them into like going to vote. So, yeah.
I want to take a moment and welcome Monica onto the show. How are you doing, Monica? Okay, maybe we won't be welcoming Monica yet.
Just listening. I gave you the live stream link.
Oh,
I didn't know she'd be on the show.
Yeah, you gave her the actual inside link. It's all good. It's all good. We'll fix it. But yeah, so let's just pivot away from just the stadium deal, and let's just talk a little bit more about this social housing. Because see, one of the things, one of my reactions when I heard you and Chris talking is like, this shouldn't even be on the table right now because social housing should have been passed. We've had Robert White promise us that this will be introduced over a year ago. Let's be honest. Like, this should have been done. And the people who need to be held accountable for this should be held accountable. What is going on with social housing? What is going on with our Green New Deal? And what's the holdup? And how do we get this thing finally through our city council?
Yeah. So before we pivot to that, I just want to make clear, you know, the stadium exists. It has existed. The Redskins left under the old regime. Now they want to come back. I mean, the stadium's already there. You know, clean it up. Go on in there. Make it fancy and new, because the bones of it look pretty good to me. But again, I would just point out, I don't think anybody on this call is saying no stadium, because it's there. I think it's a question of who's going to pay for it, and if the public's paying for it, why should that be prioritized over real public interest needs right now, such as social housing? Especially when the owner is a 9.9 billionaire. You know what I'm saying? He's got $10 billion.
As a Ward 7 resident who lives in a ward who has been asking and begging and on our knees pleading for a grocery store for 20 years, I think that it's going to be quicker for us to get a grocery store from that stadium than for us to get social housing in this city.
I mean, yeah, that speaks to Ari's point about the old model, the feudalist model, basically, where we're basically begging for stuff that's human needs, and they have turned away from us. And when I say they, I'm talking about the council, the mayors, the federal control board, the federal city council thereafter, right? They've all turned their backs on Chocolate City. And it's got the highest Black displacement in the last 20 years. I mean, like 100,000 folks gone. This is like, I'm not going to say it seems to me it's a cultural attack. It's a class attack. And when I think of a billionaire begging for money from us to build a stadium, when they have lots of money to build it on their own, they just need our okay, then go build it, Josh Harris. Build your stadium, Roger Goodell. I mean, they're both billionaires. So, build it.
I want to pause there because I hear this this attack on my team's owner, my team's majority owner, should I say. And I just want to interject and be sure that we understand that Josh Harris didn't need an extra $1 billion to build this stadium. Josh Harris, Magic Johnson, Mr. I forgot those names, Hales or Scales, and the rest of the crew could have come up with the money. There was a competition going on. There was Maryland who wanted to keep a stadium in Maryland. There was Virginia trying to appeal to the Commanders to come to Virginia. There was different factors that say, hey, look, we want you here, and this is why we want you here. The mayor and the administration proposed a deal.
But they want to be here. They get paid to be here.
The mayor and this administration are desperate right now. They don't know what to do since their model has started collapsing in 2019. They really don't. Have you heard about the Therm project, that spa that they were talking about building in Poplar Point? And then there was a whole expose about them in the Wall Street Journal or New York Times or something about them being fraudulent. And so like the mayor right now, she's going back to like her old bag of tricks. But consider this. I'm also from Ward 7, so that's where I grew up. Like I'm from like J Street. And my grandma was from Marshall Heights over on A Street, 5400 block. And there was a Safeway right back there when I was growing up. Before this model even took off, there was a Safeway and a Taco Bell and something else. I don't know if the Taco Bell's still there, but there was a Safeway over there. And like, that was like 30, 40 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And so like, we have this model, right? And so now we're like, well, maybe we'll get a grocery store if they build a stadium. And it's like, you know, they dangle like something flashy in front of us in hopes that it trickles down to us and confers some like everyday benefits for things that we should have. And like, it hasn't. It just hasn't. And maybe it will. Maybe this stadium will bring it, but maybe it won't. But I do know that like 40 years ago, before this stuff even started, there was a grocery store in Marshall Heights. Yeah. Or very close by. So, you know, like if they can manage then, like I don't know what's stopping it now. It may be this model. Maybe the model's operating how it's supposed to operate.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, the stadium's not really in Ward 7. I mean, I get it. I know they jerry-rigged the award a few years ago, basically to push back. They knew Charles Allen would say no. I mean, this was in Ward 6. So, you know, I mean, you still get, it's not like you could walk down to the grocery store. You're going to have to walk across a bridge. You know, you're going to have to cross the Anacostia to get to this grocery store. So, I mean, if East River needs a hospital, needs a medical facility, needs grocery stores, then we should be doing that. Like, where is the excitement and running to strike a deal with, you know, Trader Joe's or whatever? You know what I'm saying? For East of the River, like it's ridiculous. It's anyway. Josh Harris also, he's a Zionist. I just want to put that out there. He supports Israel's bombing of children and Palestinian families, and so I don't really get with Zionists very much at all. And so he can take his billions of dollars, and if he wants to build a stadium, great. We'll carte blanche the land for him there, and he could do that, and we could build around it, perhaps things like social housing and a grocery store and all the stuff we need. Because I don't think a stadium is going to help people in a food desert. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's going to help mamas who are dying giving birth, or, you know, childhood asthma rates in the city, or illiteracy rates. The stadium doesn't help with any of that. And I get it. There's a few jobs created. I don't believe the jobs numbers ever. I had the experience with the Adams Morgan Hotel. There were thousands of jobs promised there. It produced 2 for Adams Morgan residents. And one of them was the owner of the hotel. So it's just like it's the overpromise, the under delivery of this old model that's going to disappoint us again, and then we're on the hook for all this money that then otherwise can't be invested in healthcare, food deserts, social housing. Right? That's what I mean by prioritization. That's where the competing. That's where getting back to that original point. Like, can one thing happen simultaneously? And the answer is no. There's a budget. We're limited by how much money we got and how much money we can spend. And Josh Harris has all of it. He can spend it all on a stadium and still have $6 billion left. So anyway, should we, I guess, to the social housing point, where are we at? So yeah, unlike the stadium deals, including the arena downtown, which get done in months, this is languished in council for 2 years. And my understanding is that with the council, it has to be reintroduced. Oh, there's the layout. Look at those pretty colors. Is Google going to be involved?
So as you can see, with Josh Harris, is the stadium is that center part in the purple. Okay, that is the only part that will belong to the Commanders. The rest are private investors and the city. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. We will own, DC owns the parking lots, which is major income for the city. There's a lot of green space. There's a state-of-the-art
parking lot.
What's that?
Where's the parking lots on this?
In the purple.
Oh, the purple. Okay, in the Kingman Park District?
And Riverfront District.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, okay. I bet you the Kingman Park Civic Association is gonna love that. Yeah, put those giant parking garages in our nature habitat over here. Wow. That's amazing. Okay. Well, anyway, can't they put parking under stadiums? I don't get it. They build these giant buildings in Manhattan. Why can't they go down underneath the stadium?
Well, remember, our newly elected council member said that we can bring I-95 underground.
There you go. So let's put parking under the stadium. Why do we need to have parking garages? Seems silly. But I know people from Virginia, Maryland ain't going to be biking to the Commanders games. Tubby McGee and whoever. They're just not coming. They're not coming.
Well, they shouldn't be driving anyway because they don't pay their tickets.
So, yeah, just in comparison, the arena deal last year, which absorbed $500 million of the capital budget, and now we're doing $1 billion this year and potentially. So you're talking, it starts to add up, and this is all borrowed money, right? This is debt the city is taking out for luxury playtime, and the irony is, just let's look back to last year. So this is for Ted Leonsis, another billionaire. We're paying for his stadium to look nice, and we actually bought the stadium.
It was a terrible deal by our mayor. That was a deal that should have never gone forward. It was a terrible deal. I don't understand how we were in a position where we had the upper hand, and the mayor just gave out stuff. It's just wait. Here you go. We have it to give. That was terrible. Now I will call out
worse than that
when I see a terrible deal. It's nowhere.
It's worse than that.
The Commanders. It's nowhere near what the Commanders deal is. That was a terrible deal.
I'm not sure what the Commanders deal is. We'll see the devils in the details, but basically, those details came out over time, just like with the arena deal, they'll come out over time, and we'll see how worse it gets. But the great iron here, and I guess the main point here is because I know, Mike, you're talking about how these sort of stadiums might be able to help people, like real people of DC. And you got the arena deal and $500 million going to a billionaire. There's 300 Chinese people left in Chinatown. It's actually less now. I got the latest numbers, 275 or less. They're just matriculating. They're pushing people out. There's going to be 3 small Chinese businesses left in Chinatown where this arena is. You think any of this money is helping the people around, like the real people, the rooted people, the people who've been there, even the black community that's been downtown? Like, none of that money is helping them. And then what you see is it kicks off massive speculation. So like this company called Monument Realty, they're related to MRP Realty, which is related to Monumental Sports. They're all in cahoots. They're just buying all the properties up around there in anticipation. They knew this was going to go through. They started buying these properties up, right? And now they're flipping them and they're converting them and they're turning into luxury condos and all of that, or hotels. Nothing that actually serves people down there. So to me, it's sort of, that's the old model, right? That's the old model. You have an insider game. You're going to buy up properties around where this massive government investment is going to go. The government investment nearly eliminates the risk of the real estate market gamble, right? So these guys get this, like, basically corporate welfare to make these big bets with their big money pockets and have all the risk taken away. There's no risk to this. They have the government money to back it all up. So it's a similar situation with any of these big deals, right? And that's the same with Audi Stadium, the Nats Stadium, this arena now, and now this RFK nonsense. And to me, it's like, when we get stuck and we can't pay the rent, they want to expedite how quickly we can be evicted. But when they get stuck and they don't want to spend an extra $1 or $2 billion out of their $10 billion pocket, the city steps up pretty quickly to say, we got you, right? And I think that's like kind of the key point. I think that was what Ari was pointing out earlier, the contrast with Robert White's recent meeting with small landlords saying, we got you. We're gonna eliminate TOPA. We're gonna really attack TOPA. We're gonna make it easier to evict people. Instead of saying, oh wait, maybe we shouldn't be funding a stadium. Maybe we should be taking that money and putting that into ERAP, right? Or putting it into social housing, right? These other models. I guess that's the point, is that when I talk about prioritization, it's like we do have a limited pot of money as a government, as an entity, a municipality. And it's like, what are we prioritizing? And I get it. Nobody's saying no stadium, but we should be saying no public funding for this, because we got bigger issues, human issues, that is owed to the people of DC. And I'm talking about particularly Black DC. I mean, this, reparations comes in lots of forms. It could come in as a check to your mailbox, but it could also come as social programs that actually alleviate poverty, alleviate the pain, right? That systemically has put folks in the situations they're in. And so a stadium won't do that for us. I don't believe that. It might bring some a fleeting moment of joy and unity and a sense of nostalgia and well-being in that moment, but it doesn't create generational wealth for Black DC or any long-standing residents. It doesn't eliminate. It doesn't provide literacy classes. It doesn't provide financial literacy classes. It doesn't provide land.
Our stadium, Josh Harris' job is not to do that. That's what our mayor should be doing. That's why you and I ran for that seat, because it's not happening from a leadership of the city. Our education system should be improved. Every department in our city needs to be improved from top to bottom. And the issues in our city were issues long before the commander ever thought about getting a new stadium in this city. Um,
Can
Speaking
can I
of
share?
issues in this city, we are at our 45-minute mark. And so, Ari, before you left, I did want to ask you personally about your thoughts on the Ward 8 council member race, the special election, should I say, and is there anything interesting happening? Any interesting developments that you see happening? What do you think is best for Ward 8? And also, let's not forget to let the people know how they can contact you if they have any other questions or maybe even need representation. I'll speak firsthand saying this brother knows his stuff and this brother is for the people. Go ahead, Ari.
Oh, I appreciate that, Michael. So my number is 202-651-1148 if you want to reach me. Um, my thoughts on the Ward 8 race, and similar to Mike's thoughts earlier, majority rules. And I feel like Trayon's going to get back in there. And I think that there's an argument to be made for why he should be back in there. I don't think he ever should have been removed without going through his full due process, especially considering, the it kind of reeks of hypocrisy to me, considering our current council. But I feel like Trayon's going to get back in, and I'm excited to see what he does when he gets back in. I think, we learn from our mistakes, and get better, and our slips and our falls, and we get back up from them, and we're going to see what's in store for Ward 8.
I definitely agree with you. I've probably been a staunch supporter, probably have lost followers in my support for the former council member, should I say. But as a man of faith, number one, I do believe that everyone all deserves grace. We all make mistakes. And number two, as someone who has fought for civil rights, I also do believe in due process. It's hard for me to fight for a young man and say that this young black brother didn't get his day in court, but the police serve execution and then turn around and we do the same exact thing to our council member. I can't pass judgment. This guy hasn't had his day in court. And even while our brother is going through, I still believe that we're there to stand with them and support, especially someone who has dedicated his life to DC and Ward 8. So, Chris, I believe you had a video you wanted to show.
Yeah, I don't mean to get out the Ward 8 stuff, but like Ari had sent me clips. Ari, you were at a meeting last week,
Right.
at Busboys and Poets.
Yeah.
Who is the audience and who is the speaker? That was Robert White. Yeah.
Okay. So the group is called SMOA, Small Multifamily Unit Owners Association. I think that's what they are. They're a new organization. They started about 5 years ago. You can imagine like their whole reason for starting, and it was, I believe, because evictions had been paused during the pandemic. And so, the landlords kind of organized together. And, I must admit, being in that room, there's a lot of energy in that room, a lot of angst, a lot of anger, but then also a lot of hope that they had in the current leadership, Muriel Bowser, Robert White, to do something to help them out of the situation that they're in. Because a lot of them, as Robert White went on and he was talking about how 20% of people aren't paying rent, a lot of them are smaller landlords, and they were kind of you know harmed by not being able to collect rent. And I imagine some of them probably are at risk of being evicted. But we have to remember that these people are investors. They took risk. Market conditions changed, and now they're asking to be bailed out at the expense of laws and rights that people in DC have sometimes had for decades.
Okay.
But here's the video. There's like a few clips. This is Robert White talking to them.
Okay.
We are in a severe crisis point. And if we don't,
Is this working?
it will continue to hurt people like my family, the people who want to call DC home. Now, we're seeing a number of things happen right now. More than 80% of housing properties that have received DC funding are not bringing in enough rental income to pay their mortgages or maintenance costs. Rental delinquency is higher in DC than anywhere else in the country, including neighboring jurisdictions. DC has a 15 to 20% rate of rental units either empty or occupied by tenants that are not paying rent. Evictions in DC can take up to 24 months, which is far out of line with surrounding jurisdictions. And 14 of the 62 Superior Court judgeships are currently vacant. And last year, this was the one that really hit in the gut. The district issued the lowest share of multifamily permits, housing permits for buildings with 5 or more units in more than a decade. So what does this spell? This spells our good landlords, our best actors leaving DC. People said the biggest issue with investment in DC housing is hope. Now, doesn't matter whether or not I agree with it, if the market is saying that we're not going to invest in DC because of TOPA, then we have to do something. And I would also remind folks that, again, it's not just the big developers and landlords, it's folks like the Washington Housing Conservancy, it's folks like Amazon Housing that are doing more affordable housing deals around us than in DC. So what we need to do is strengthen TOPA on the back end. Let's loosen up TOPA on the front end so that we can start to produce more housing and push down costs on housing. The second thing we are looking to do is, again, all these vacancies in the courts, we don't have jurisdiction over Superior Court. So there's only so much we can do there. However, through my oversight work, what I realized, we have some DC administrative courts that deal in housing issues that don't have a lot of cases. I believe that we can take some of our housing cases to these courts because they have space. That will allow us to move more quickly. I don't want evictions to be skewed toward landlords or skewed toward tenants. I want it to be fair, to work the way that it's supposed to do, but also have a predictable timeline. So that is going to address the second highest frequency of feedback that I've heard in these series of meetings. How are you going to look at regulations in Washington, D.C. to make it easier and less expensive to develop, so we don't have to develop market rate housing, we can actually develop workforce housing? Appreciate the question. On rent control, I don't know where we're going on rent control yet. Cannot do everything at once. That is a recipe for failure. So we'll take a look at rent control later, but we've got to get past this hurdle first. The issue with fees and regulations, I wanted to take a close look at all of those. What I realized as I started doing that is that it was time consuming in a way that couldn't allow me to get these things that I've heard from everybody done.
So there was Robert White in defense of the old model, and you asked earlier, can we do both the old model and some of this new stuff? And like what we're hearing literally is Robert White defending the commoditization of housing. When he talks about loosening up TOPA on the front end, what he's defending is investors. He's defending investors' money, literally the commoditization of money or of housing. And so, can we do both? Can we have a decommodified housing market in social housing, and a commodified one where the primary focus is investors over, people who are living, and have families and trying to make it in the city? I don't think that we can have both. I think that they're mutually exclusive, and if you were paying attention to what he's talking about, taking housing cases out of landlord-tenant court and putting it in administrative agencies. And I think that is a recipe for disaster.
For those who don't understand TOPA, I put up some of the a quick little diagram. But I don't. I didn't recognize Robert White in that video. The Robert White that I've come to know, there's something about how great TOPA is for the residents, and I don't know. I haven't. I don't know. I have to just go back and watch the video in its entirety before I say anything that I end up maybe regretting. Robert White has definitely has been very good with me, should I say, and the issues that I've had, he has definitely come and taken care of them. He has taken every call, every email, and he has been responsive. When we have had meetings, he has been pretty cool. I can just chalk it up to, that was a meeting with landlords. He's a politician. And he did what he had to do. I don't know, man. I don't know. Like,
hey, the changes are coming, Pastor Mike. They're coming, and you can hold on to that hope. But the legislation, part of what was cut out was him talking about hoping to introduce this legislation this cycle and speeding it up, and them not being able to do it because the mayor hasn't transmitted her budget yet. But a lot of what was cut out, fairly, you may criticize me for that, but I intentionally cut out the spiel that he does about his family, about him being a 5th generation resident, about it being for the poor folks that he knows. I cut all that stuff out, Pastor Mike. And I just tried to get cut straight to like the legislation. I tried to just keep it there, but like there's a lot of it. Like if you listen to the whole thing, you might be a Robert White fan again. You know what I'm saying? Because he can gussy up some deregulation. He can he's a good politician. He may earn your sympathy, listening to him talk and all that stuff, but that was the substance of what he said. It was only a 15-minute speech.
It's been
3 minutes of substance.
It's been a spiral, because he was like pretty cool at first, and I guess I'm also with DC for Democracy, and I'm with their housing committee, and so we dive into a lot of things, and so a lot of stuff has just been like, you're disappointing me. Like, you could do a little bit more here, or you could do a little bit more there. And I don't. All I can chalk it up is that he just perhaps is preparing for a mayoral run, and he's
to the right of Bowser. To the right
of Bowser. Yeah. So there's a couple things that struck me. Abraham Lincoln, when he would be politician Lincoln before president in New York, all men are created equal. When he was in Kansas, some men might be more created equal than others, right? It's the audience. And this happened to be an audience of investor landlords who are saying we can't. What are we doing? We can't keep things afloat. And instead of kind of contending with that systemic issue that people can't pay rent, it's like, okay, how do we get the people out faster is the response. And that's just like the wrong turn. And it's even idiotic actually in the sense of like the logic. So loosening up TOPA on the front end, if I heard that right, will somehow increase production of housing on the back end. It's a home. It's already built. The building's built. It's not like there's going to be more housing produced or not. It's just a question of who's living there. So I didn't even understand that. Like when he said it's going to create more housing by loosening up TOPA, to me, it just completely missed the logic sense of it. And it's just sort of a knee-jerk reaction to placate this constituency. And this constituency isn't really for the people. Like this is a constituency of people who are into social theft, taking our rent every month. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm very radical, I guess, but it's sort of like I view rent as a social theft. But even if I were to, absolve myself of that position and say, yeah, that's just something that we have to do as humans. We got to pay for housing. If people can't do it and they've been here forever and they can't do it anymore, then something is systemically broke. Like if we can't pay our rent anymore and there's all this displacement going on, there's systemic issues that have to be dealt with. The answer isn't to just expedite the displacement.
When I want to speak a little to like what Robert White was getting at about loosening up the front end of TOPA. So like I've spoken to different people in different industries, developers, title insurers. And so what he's saying about TOPA loosening it up on the front end is by exempting, he wants to exempt, and this is in the full tape, he wants to exempt properties that are less than 15 years old from TOPA applying, and wants to exempt properties that have underwent significant renovations within the past 15 years from TOPA applying. And so that's what he means by loosening up TOPA on the front end. And the reason why he wants to do this is because there are investors, right? So again, we're talking about the commoditization of housing. There are people who've invested either in building housing up front or in renovating housing. And they want to pull their money out at some point. They don't want to be investors forever. Like once the property has gotten more value or something's happened to increase the property value, they want to pull out their investment, their upfront investment or the investment in the renovations and take their return. But what's happening is TOPA is making that process unpredictable, because before they can sell their interest, before they can get rid of their or liquidate their investment, they're having to go through this TOPA process, essentially of tenants seeking to join the investment team. And so that's kind of what's happening there, and why he's saying that the reason for lack of investment is because what he's saying is people don't want to build in DC if when they go to pull out their money, they're going to have to go through this long, unpredictable TOPA process. And so that's kind of his argument. I think that there are a lot of reasons why people are building in DC. I think that a lot of the people in that room are desperate. And I think ultimately, a lot of people in DC, the government, the politicians, the bureaucrats, they're not business people. They're not great negotiators. And so really, I think like if I'm like looking at this, correctly, and I think I am, the way I'm seeing it is there are a bunch of people who are like actually are trying to leave DC's market right now. They're trying to disinvest from DC, the opposite of what DC wants. And TOPA's holding them up. And so they're basically saying like, hey, get rid of TOPA and we'll invest. But really it's get rid of TOPA so we can get the heck out. And I don't think that our council or the mayor or anybody in DC government is like hip the game. Or I definitely think Robert White has drank the Kool-Aid. I think he believes that. When he came to Ward 8, he stayed away from TOPA. He was supposed to come out to Ward 8. He came out to Ward 8 April 26th. And he was supposed to talk about all these changes that they're about to introduce to TOPA and to the Rental Housing Act, speeding up evictions, taking them out of landlord-tenant court. He didn't talk about none of that. All he talked about was housing conditions. And he's slick because he knew that in Ward 8, you could take up a 2-hour meeting just talking about housing conditions. So, but at the end of the day, we don't have a councilman right now. And the way I see it is somebody still owes us a visit from the council, whether it's Robert White or Mendelson or somebody else from that committee or at large, owes us a conversation about what's about to happen. Because that has not happened. He came out the 26th. He didn't talk about none of that stuff. I have the 2-hour recording.
I agree. TOPA is very, very, very important. It's a very, very, it's a great tool in our city that we need to use. There are neighborhoods that have survived because of the TOPA Act, and we cannot allow our rights to be gutted by our city leadership while they are crying about their rights being gutted by the government. It's just not making sense. We have reached the end of our show. Unfortunately, this is a great, great conversation. I know there is so much more to discuss. Unfortunately, I have some very, very bad little 6th, 7th, and 8th graders I need to get to. And next week, we will definitely still be on this subject. We're going to have a special guest, Chris Furnish. As always, attorney Teresa is always welcome back if you want. I'm going to try to get Lady Shantae High back on next week. But we are going to talk with Lady Furnish, who is heading the Home Snap Stadiums initiative. I worked with Chris on the Initiative 83, who is going through its own challenges, and I'll be sure to include that in next week's conversation. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. This is the first episode of our season this year, as a matter of fact. We haven't been on in about a month or so. So this is our welcome back. And let us know how you feel about us coming back. Thank you to the attorney.
Thank you, Ari.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Maybe we could get Robert White on with Ari. That would be amazing.
I have sent the office of Robert White. I have sent him 3 emails. I'm waiting for a response. When he saw me in person, he told me to send the email for a response. So I can't wait to catch up to him again. Unfortunately, I'm working at a school now in the evenings, but as soon as I get a free evening and I can get to him, I'm getting to him. I want him on the show. I've been trying. We have a lot of questions for him, and I'm very suspect of him running for the next mayoral election.
Well, we can maybe work with him to kind of understand where he's coming from on this, and also win him to a new model. If he understands the old model so well, maybe he can get hip to the new ways that we can keep people in the city.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit more selfish and say I need him to understand that as a DC for Democracy member and a progressive Democrat, we put you in that seat, buddy, and you owe it to us to stick to your words and your promises. I will say that.
That's what's up. All right.
Thanks,
y'all.
Good show, guys.
Good show.
the pain, I'm feeling the shame. Will I go numb? Will I go insane? It's cold. Yeah. Shout out FHTMG, shout out Abu Dhabi. Yeah. Running from the feeling the pain, the feeling the shame. Will I go numb? Will I go insane? No. I just gotta pray. Oh, I just gotta pray. Running from the feeling the pain, the feeling the shame. Or will I go numb or go insane? No, you gotta pray. Oh, I gotta pray. I gotta pray for that. I gotta pray for that. I gotta pray for that. I gotta pray for that.